Welcome to the Beauty Blend podcast, where we delve deep into the world of beauty from the inside out. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Brittany.
And today we have a special guest, Stony Burks. Thanks for joining us
Thank
today.
You for having me. I appreciate
Glad to have you.
Good.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, you're looking at me. You were looking at her.
We tried
It's going to be
so
a lot of cutting.
Okay.
And
You have to get in fast. You have to like recover.
you were looking at her when you asked me a question.
I'm sorry. She was still trying to laugh. I'm like,
She's trying to say something before she...
I was like, please take the mic.
So,
Do we need to repeat all of that again then? Okay, great.
Okay,
I think it's funny too.
all right. We'll just start at introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Me or her?
You,
Stony.
Can you tell us about yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Stony Burks, originally from San Diego, California. I moved here when I was in 11th grade to overcome some troubles that I was having out in California, kind of avoid some of the stuff that was happening back there. I finished college in Wisconsin, moved back to Ohio, and now I'm here. I'm a real estate professional in property management and on the residential and commercial side of real estate. On the side, I do coaching and I own a couple gyms and I do mostly mentorship of youth.
Drop some stuff I didn't know about there.
Uh,
Let's backtrack though. The first 11 years, you're kind of like, I wanted to get away from that. What was it that you're trying to get away from?
So in California in the early 80s, 70s, 80s, the gang violence was at the utmost. That's actually, this hat represents the old program of DARE. which
Yeah,
is drug
actually,
abuse.
that was the very first thing I said when you wore that
Yeah.
hat. I go, is that a dare
Everyone
hat?
thinks it's the
Hat.
dare hat, but it's actually a representation of the new age of people already know about drug awareness, but now people are kind of avoiding that and saying drugs are cool. And this is a hat that says drugs
Very
kill people.
blatant. Like,
So yeah.
let's get to the point here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was big into sports and arts. I went to an art school in California because of I was very, very artsy, even in with dance and
You have a
things
creative
like that.
side.
I'm big with the creative stuff.
Oh, okay.
My family wanted me. My mother had me. She was 14, so she was trying to raise me.
14.
Yeah.
Let's just take that in for a second.
Yeah, she was a baby having babies.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my mother, first few years of my life, was more of like my best friend.
Yeah.
Wow.
And being
brought
that
it
she was
together.
learning how to be a mom, she wasn't doing a good job of
Well.
teaching me and raising me.
Yeah, you don't
She
even
was
know how to
still a
be an adult at
14.
14.
Yeah,
That's
no.
crazy.
I was signing my own. Well, back then, before your guys' time,
Hey,
you got sent home with a paper report card.
Hey,
and
Hey,
your-
we did too.
my time, I was 80s, baby.
well, you guys couldn't. A 5-year-old couldn't forge their own stuff back then. Now,
I
Our
know my
dad.
dad's signature. Anyway.
well, yeah. So I
all
used
do
to,
that.
yeah, I used to sign my mother's signature up until I think I was 13 years old on my grade cards.
wow.
So just learning that she had worked third shift, and I had no idea. We got broken into once, and I went to look for my mom during the break-in, and she was not there.
So third shift's like night shift.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
She went to
gosh.
work
and
at
you
11.
got broken
So you're by
into, and she
yourself.
wasn't
I was
there.
by myself, and I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh,
So
that's
that was, I think I was
traumatizing.
6 at the time, and that was kind of like the first eye opener for my family back home.
Did you like hide when they came in? Or
Yeah, so crazy story. Like I seen 3 guys walk by the room, and I, kind of dipped out to my mom's room and tried to wake her up, and it was a bunch of pillows. And
terrifying.
I got up under the covers and covered up underneath the covers. My feet were still hanging off the bed.
Oh my gosh.
And one of the guys came in the room, and I peed my pants. I mean, I
Yeah,
was
I would've-
scared
you were
as
a
a
kid.
6-year-old. He covered my feet, and he was like, "It's all right, little man. It's all right, little man." And then he walked out, and they got like the TV and some other small items. But
Thank God.
yeah, so
my God.
so it was more. I stayed in there, and then my mom came home at like 7 in the morning, and she seen that
She just stayed in the bed until she came home.
yeah, for sure.
That's terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
lucky that they didn't decide to do
I
anything
know.
else.
We stayed out of the way.
Yeah, so my grandparents found out about that, and they had just moved from Ohio or from California to Ohio. So they moved just due to some naval stuff. So I came out here and they started to send for me every summer. So I was in year-round school. So we would be in school for sometimes 11 months, sometimes 12 months, but then we get a big, long 5-month break for the school
Oh,
I was. It's pretty cool.
Mhm.
So I would go to Ohio back and forth. So I developed friends here, and I learned how to play different sports because in Cali you kind of just pick your sport because of the weather.
mm,
Just pick it and stick to it. So coming to 11th grade, all the gang stuff got really crazy out there, and my family was like, "Well, you can't be out there because your mother, she's non-existent," and we just felt like you're gonna fall victim to that because my whole neighborhood, you had to have a kid to live in the complex I lived in.
oh,
So, and it
Oh,
was 600 units, if that gives you an
yeah.
idea
wow.
How many
That's
of
a
how
kids?
many
lot of
kids.
units.
You had to have one. So, but
Mm-hmm.
some people had 5 and 6
Wow.
out there.
Wow.
So,
So you
yeah, it was
got your
pretty
kids.
crazy. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, there was times when me and my cousin, he lived in the same complex where there were times when we were hungry because our moms were out doing the same thing,
Mhm.
and we broke into the neighbor's house,
To
this
get
older
food.
lady, to get food, and
Aw.
it became a pattern. Like, and she'd start leaving cookies and all this
Oh,
other
she's like
She's
stuff,
like,
and
breaking.
I don't need you
She left
breaking
the
in.
door
I'll just
unlocked.
leave.
yeah, no, that's
She
what she
did.
started to do. She started to leave the door unlocked because
Aw.
we used to go through the window. We wouldn't break it, but we'd go,
Yeah.
we'd pick up after ourselves. And one Christmas, she had bought a video game, and she didn't have any kids anymore. She's had grandkids that was
Mm,
with her,
Mhm.
so she went and bought a Nintendo, and so we in there playing a Nintendo. We thought that
she adopted you guys.
we thought we were getting over, like,
Yeah.
oh, let's go to the store and play Nintendo. But the last, I think we found out when we were like 18 that she actually had done that for us.
Aw.
So it
Yeah,
was
that's
kind of a
sweet.
cool thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but then so my family sent a semi out there to get all my stuff because my uncle drove semi. So I thought that I was just coming out here for the summer.
Ohio, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And all my stuff came right after that. And I didn't get to say goodbye to any of my friends. And that was it because
Oh,
they knew that if I found out that they were moving here, I would have just
yeah.
You'd
dipped out.
never.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't have any guidance there. So I would have just moved. I would just went to someone else's house and stayed.
Just,
So, what age were you when you got here?
I was in 11th grade.
Okay.
So 16 maybe.
Ooh, that's a tough age too.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when you're like starting to become an adult, but like
You
we
have your
really
own
don't know.
opinions for
I kind of
sure.
had my own little sauce. I wasn't
Yeah.
raised by anybody, and
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
when I came here, I'm living with my grandparents who had all the rules in the world. So
Mhm.
definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
So, what'd you get into once you got here? When you came to
Well,
Ohio?
that's when I first started to actually play basketball. Was kind of in 11th grade. I took it serious, and the neighborhood I lived in here, everyone played basketball. So like even in the winters, they'd scrape off the courts, and I was very good at baseball.
Mhm.
I was being recruited by MLB teams when I was in the
Oh,
seventh
wow.
grade.
Okay.
So when I came here, I still played a little bit of baseball, but not as baseball's not as popular here, so I kind of fell off and just played basketball.
That makes sense.
I was never into a lot of trouble.
Mhm.
That just wasn't my MO. So I always found things to do. Like in Cali, there's so much to do without that you don't have to pay.
Right.
Mhm.
So when I got here, I'm like, oh, I gotta find stuff to do. Like, so it started to be little things like going fishing and just picking up little hobbies like that. So we had rec centers back then, not like the use of rec centers now, but they were more community centers. So I kind of took a liking to a lot of the community centers, and I was there all the time, and that's really who raised me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Community centers, huh?
That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
So, so your grandparents though were the ones raising you for the most part at that point.
Yeah.
It had to be pretty tough transitioning from all of that.
Mhm.
So, how do you feel like? I mean, you obviously are established and successful now. How do you feel like you overcame all of that adversity as you grew up?
Well,
Like, what did you have? What have you done to heal that? I
I
guess.
I think not so much heal, but just having an understanding of. I was able to see a lot of things, and that's one thing I tell people and kids that I mentor is you have to be exposed to different things because if you're not exposed, you don't know.
Mm.
An example would be the kids that I coached lacrosse at Bexley. I had no experience with lacrosse or anything, but I was a head coach varsity because they knew that I had a good relationship with some of the kids.
Mhm.
Well, a street over from Columbus Public is one Bexley Street that was all low income housing.
Oh.
So it's crazy because the kids on the other street that went to South, their outlook on things that was different from the kids that were come from the same background on the other street were different.
Mhm.
And doing the research, you see that because they're in Bexley schools and they're around different people, they're going in different people's houses, they're seeing
Mhm.
summer vacations and spring break, and these are things that you wouldn't see on the other side of the street. So just having that mentality and learning from the exposure that you're in.
Mhm.
And that's what sports did for me, travel sports. It put me in different environments. It let me see what a two-person household was supposed to look like.
Mhm.
Mm.
It let me see, oh, we have dinner at 5 o'clock every day. Like, this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta be home when the lights come on. I've never had to be home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just having that structure was the first thing, and it just being exposed to different environments. I think that a lot of youth are not exposed to anything.
Mhm.
A lot, even here, you can pick any side of town that's low income, and you can see those kids usually don't even leave that area, so
Mhm.
they have no clue. So their mind is just so small thought. Like they don't think about this is you. I want to be a rapper, a drug dealer, or play sports.
Yeah,
Mhm.
see
Yeah,
anything
those are
else
like the three
outside of that.
options.
Yeah, and that's what they see,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and it's like now you look at really who's raising your kids. I know
Mhm.
you guys don't have any kids at this point, but
Just fur babies.
you,
We can debate
That'll
that
be
later. I'm just
controversial for
kidding.
some people, but anyway.
people really miss the ball. Like you look at how much doctors make and their influence and their effect on the world, and you look at teachers and how much they're made and their effect on the world.
Mhm.
Well, the ball is getting dropped in our youth and the growth and development of people in the school systems, which are the lowest paying jobs that you can get.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost
Mhm.
like it's programmed to be that way.
Yeah.
Mm.
So in other countries that I've traveled to, it's different than that because they want the people teaching to be well taken care of,
Teachers.
so they can get those smarter people, more educated people teaching.
And it
Mhm.
helps
Um,
the whole society.
Right.
yes, but
When education's like a gift versus being like, I feel like some people view it here as like you just have to do it. But I
yeah,
feel like in other countries, it's like
yeah, yeah,
this is
yeah,
an honor to be able to do this.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like we want people we need this whole status system to stimulate the economy, so they have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, the most parents spend an hour with their kids before school, if that, an hour with their maybe 2 hours after school. But those 6 to 8 hours during the day, the school is who's raising your kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, so you really have to think about like where are they getting their information from. It's either going to be this, or it's going to be what they're surrounded with at school, and that's
Yeah.
why it's so important. Excuse me, to make sure your kids are in a great school system so that they can learn the right thing and again be exposed to the right type of people.
Yeah.
I remember when I lived in South Africa, I was at a stoplight and this guy, he was dancing and he had these little flames and he was just trying to collect money. And I got out the car. I was always, when I first got there, I was very adventurous and just trying to figure out the culture and stuff. And I parked the car and I'm talking to him like, what are you doing out here trying to raise money for? And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm trying to raise money for my kids
Mm.
to go to private school. And I'm like, well, how old is your kid? And he was like, he ain't born yet.
He's already
Oh.
starting. That's how much.
So he was trying to build up that money so that when they had enough money, they can have their kids so they can send their kid to private school.
Wow.
Mm.
So that mentality was very different.
That's
Mhm.
But because
amazing.
they know over there, they don't have a welfare system that takes care of them when times get rough.
Mhm.
Right.
So
They're already thinking
You do
about
it-
future family before that
already.
happens. Yeah.
they're already trying to not let their kid be born in a hole.
That's impressive.
Mm.
Honestly, I gotta give a round of applause.
I know,
for
that's
that.
amazing.
Really, yeah.
Hmm. Did you have like a rock bottom or anything
That's
like
what I
that that
wondered.
kind of like shifted your view on life or like how you're gonna approach life?
Several times. I mean,
You
Preach.
can say all of them, or
Yeah.
if there's one that
No,
One
sticks
in
out.
there.
particular.
I was in the streets doing the wrong thing
Mhm.
and making money the wrong way.
Mhm.
And I think at one point I had $1.6 million cash in my house.
I gotta ask you, like, is that what drove you to do it? You just saw people that were doing that, and you're like,
Just around you.
this is how I can survive, or
It
like, what was
it
the
was
mentality?
more of I see this lifestyle and
Want
I
it?
was very good. No, it wasn't so much the items because I never had the items. I was always the type of person I want my see my friends do well.
Mm.
Mm.
So it was more of when I was doing it, I wasn't buying cars and jewelry and all that. It was more of a let me make sure my friends are good. Let me be there. It was the reason I started doing that was because I wanted to adjust. I was working at Cardinal Health,
Mm-hmm.
and for one, they first told me that I needed to cut my hair off and I couldn't have tattoos.
Oh wow.
So times have definitely changed.
Yeah, I remember those days though.
But yeah, I wanted to take a day off to go to my daughter's play,
Mm-hmm.
and they told me no.
Mm.
And that was like, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like my motivation. I've always been around it and it's never been attractive to me. And even at that point, I was just like, oh, well, all right, well, I can do this, make quick 1,000 a day. Da, da, da.
Mhm.
And it just became so easy and routine that it just became accustomed to it. You
Yeah.
know, it was less work. And I mean, it soaked up about 5 years of my life.
Mhm.
And there was a time when I had stopped, I bought a home, and the guy who I was dealing with, I had been stopped about 5 months, but he got in trouble in West Virginia.
Oh.
And my name came up in the court
Oh
systems
wow.
because that's his brother knew my name and whatnot. So big scare. And the attorney I had, he calls me, he was like, what would you pay for your freedom? And I'm like,
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He came and got my boat, both of my cars,
Oh, wow.
my house,
Took it all.
and all the money I had. And I was okay with that because I was sitting on my porch for every night for 2 weeks at 7 p.m. to 11 because that's when it gets dark and that's usually when they raid. Because I was
Mhm.
like, they're going to probably raid me at this time. And I didn't want my kid to see that.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
so you were out
So I
there
was
ready.
outside the whole
Mm.
time being prepared for that.
Oh, wow.
So that was, it was easy for me to start over because I had a mentality of, you just figure it out. Because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't grow up with much, I just always figured it out
Mhm.
Yeah.
because I had been exposed to seeing those positive things and seeing money made the right way and seeing negotiations. And it's crazy because a lot of the successful drug dealers
Mm-hmm.
are people that come from environments that you would not imagine they come from. People think it's all from the streets. No, the ones who are like big time, they've all come from families, successful families. I mean, you see all the cartel stuff,
Mm-hmm.
all from successful families
Interesting.
because they start to understand how transactions go, how negotiation goes, and it's never about the actual dollar for them. So
I think it was a key point though that you said I can do this again, just in a different way. Because
Mhm.
I often, when I have to start at ground zero, I start to freak out. But then I have to remind myself I've done this before.
Mhm.
I made it work. So you kind of have to like go back to those times where like, okay, I know how to do this. I'm not necessarily starting at
And you come
ground
back
zero.
yeah,
And yeah, I can figure this out. I like that.
I also think knowing too life is like kind of a wave sometimes.
It
We
is.
have our peaks
A lot
and
of
our
times.
yeah.
yeah. It's just
So you're
like
not always climbing up. You're not always
Yeah.
climbing
yeah,
down.
it's like a heart rate
waves.
monitor.
Exactly.
It's when it's healthy, it's doing
Mhm.
this, and when it's like
Mhm.
this, you gotta
Mhm.
worry
You
because
gotta-
something's happening.
Something's gonna happen soon.
Yeah.
It's either gonna go up or down.
So that time period, is that when you were like, okay, I'm going to do something different? Or was it something after that?
No, it was. I was already during that. I was already transitioning. I had a new construction cleaning company.
Oh, okay.
What else did I do? I worked from home in IT for
Mhm.
Huntington. I did a lot at that time.
Oh, okay.
My biggest transition in the reasoning was my kids
Mm-hmm.
because I needed to show my kids how I have to move to get where I want to go. At that point, I didn't really have a real path to teach them. It
Mm-hmm.
was more of okay, this is what I come from, this is what I'm subject to. If I live my life like this and this is where it ends, it's gonna be okay. And that's not it.
Right.
So I wanted to kind of develop a blueprint for my kids. So I started to pay attention to other people. I seek mentors. I found a couple people in my family that were doing well and kind of gravitated to them and started asking for advice. And I started reading a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The things that entertained people, like the clubs and all that, that was never me.
Mhm.
So I removed myself from those temptations. They always say the sin is for the night. So,
That's funny.
so I
Nothing good
removed
happens
myself
that
from
night.
They
that.
do say
The
nothing
sin
good
is-
happens past what?
Midnight or
Midnight?
something like
Yeah,
that,
the
Yeah.
sin
yeah.
is for the night. Go to sleep.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, it's just and now just being able to handle stressful situations,
Mhm.
knowing that when you go through something, it's just a process,
Mhm.
and everything is that you have is and that you want is always going to be a process.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
So,
good advice. I like it.
How did you get into like coaching people?
well, again, I knew what sports did for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, and your coach is your daddy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's sad to say, but your coach is your daddy.
Mhm.
And I was always good at mentoring because I felt like I had a good story to tell, and
Mm-hmm.
that kids can always relate to me.
Relatable, yeah.
Um, I think it's very hard, especially for the older coaches now, to relate to the younger kids if they don't have a
Mhm.
story.
For sure.
I
If
agree.
you ain't dirty, you can't show me how to dig a hole.
Right.
So
And how am I gonna get to where you're at if you haven't been where I'm at?
exactly,
Exactly.
Yeah.
because we
You don't get
really
it.
don't have an understanding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was when I coached at Bexley's. A good example is I had to be very vulnerable because the environment's different.
Mm-hmm.
These kids, their stress is different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into that thinking, oh, these kids don't have no stress. They're from wealthy families. They already know what they're gonna do,
Mm-hmm.
and it's crazy because even though they didn't have the same stress as me, they have stress.
Stress. It's
Oh,
just a
absolutely.
different kind of
It's just a
stress.
different type of
Mhm.
stress.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them it was my dad works so much. We have all the money in the world, but he doesn't pay any attention to me, and
Right.
Mm-hmm.
just things like that. But I had to be very vulnerable with these kids. I spent a lot of time with the team, just kind of exposing myself to my past.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things that I wasn't proud of, and just so they could say like, "Dang, coach is real."
Mhm.
Um, Once they started to ask more questions, they started to be more engaged with me, and they started to buy into the system that I was coaching.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy because once the whole George Floyd thing happened,
Oh,
all of the kids from the team, we had far been, I had stopped coaching by then, but all the kids like called me like, coach, we're sorry,
yeah.
what can we do, let's get together and let's do something. So we kind of all got together and we just did a little march and kind of talked
Aw,
about it,
that's
had an
cool.
open platform, and just
Yeah.
people asking questions. I think a lot of the adversities never overcame because no one wants to have the difficult conversations.
I agree with that.
I'll say that event in particular really opened a lot of us up to have those difficult
Mhm.
conversations that we wanted to avoid or like we thought maybe weren't appropriate. But like
Don't know
now's
how
the
to
time.
ask.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we're in a day
Offending.
where everyone's sensitive.
Right. You don't
Yeah.
want to
You
offend
can't really
someone.
ask
We're
a
scared to
question.
ask without
Yeah.
being
Mhm.
offensive. Or
Right,
something.
and whether people misinterpret stereotypes from racism.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when you try to have a conversation about a stereotype, you're a racist, and that goes for every color. That just happens, and that's just stereotypes are real.
Mm-hmm.
But unless they're talked about, it's going to be deemed as racism. Nobody
Right.
wants to be deemed a racist, like,
Right.
especially when you're not.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Not trying to be at
No,
least. Yeah.
yeah.
You're just trying to
yeah.
educate.
So
Mhm.
that's a big issue with this generation and overcoming thing is people they don't have an open platform to have these conversations with.
Right. I agree.
So
You say one thing that gets taken the wrong way, and
Mm-hmm.
it's tough.
yeah, just there's a lot of misunderstanding. So
Very
in
sad.
order and social media is really feeding everyone's mind with ideas instead of your experiences shaping you, which is the way it used to be back in the day before social media, before the internet. It was your experiences shape who you are.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm curious, like from the kids that you coach and things, like how social media is shaping them. Like, is it they feel like they got to keep up with the Joneses, or like what's like their mentality?
Well, yeah, everyone is like that now. I
Not
mean,
even
So
kids.
true. Yeah.
I'm
like
just curious.
I'm curious how
you
it's
got
affecting the kids.
you
though.
got to think about it. Like spiritual people, any any spiritual advice that you're given or anything that you're reading, it usually says you can't be of self. There's something bigger, and you have to respect and love whatever is bigger. Well, if you look at social media, what's social media about? It's about self.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the morals and values that we're all brought up to by our parents and the experiences are kind of gone because it's let's post about self.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing? What do I look like on here?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see anyone. Imagine if you had to post the first picture you took of yourself, but
Oh
no
my
filters.
lord.
We
And,
talked
like
about
every
that
time you took a
episode.
picture, no matter what, it gets uploaded.
But back in
You
the
know what I
day, you
mean?
couldn't see anything anyway. It was all grainy.
Yeah, I used to joke the cameras were better though,
There's-
so that's why we need filters now because the cameras are
They
too
see everything
sharp.
now. Back in the day when our little camera, you couldn't see anything.
But you are who you are,
Right.
and I think we're missing the boat of being ourselves, and we're so caught up in that we're losing our morals and values and our spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Because we're disconnected from
Very
our own self.
disconnected.
And I think we're idolizing other people.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
When you're posting to please instead of really posting to share.
Mm-hmm.
That was a word right there.
Yeah,
That
it
was-
was.
Another time mark.
For sure.
Good one. I agree. Yeah, I always wonder how I feel like we're lucky that we didn't grow up in this intensity of social media, because I don't know what that would have done to me.
Yeah.
It's already hard enough as an
Yeah,
adult. I can't
same.
imagine as a
Yeah, and I kind of
kid.
grew up on the like
Yeah.
both, so I understand both. But
Same.
I
Mhm.
have my own opinion. I'm not gonna repost somebody else's opinion. I can just write my own.
Right.
Yeah, you do on yours.
You do.
I do. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah, he does.
Put
The
your
only thing he
opinion out there.
reposts are animals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I do repost animals because I'm
Yep,
a
saving
big animal
animals.
lover, and a
Yeah.
lot of times it's the lost animals. The
Hmm.
people are trying to
Oh
find
yeah,
their
I love
Yeah.
dogs,
that.
so I repost it
Rescues.
all the time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I love my dogs.
How'd you get to like where you're at now with like the businesses and things like that? Is that just from experience being just working different jobs or like kind of what propelled you?
So I I came over to real estate. So there was a guy I trained his kids. He's from Upper Arlington, a very successful real estate investor. And I trained his kids. Never asked him what he did, but I own a gym down the road, and he came to me off of a referral. And he always heard me talk about I wanted to get into real estate, and
Mm.
I wanted to help with generational wealth and teach my kids that so they can teach that because
Hmm.
there was none of that before me, and I've
Right.
seen it because
Mhm.
I've been exposed to it. So I knew it could happen, and he always hear me talking about this. And one day he was like, "Hey man," it's like, "I've been listening to you. You want to jump in this real estate stuff?" And I was
Wow.
like, "I'd love to." He was like, "Come down to the coffee shop."
Hmm.
So they own a coffee shop in Grandview. So I went
Mm.
down there,
Oh.
and it's crazy because like we had a meeting, and our first meeting was me, him, and a hedge fund owner. And the hedge fund owner I had never met before,
Mm.
who I'm in business now with,
Hmm.
and not the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
But we sat down, and he put this deal on the table. My friend did, and he was like, I need to raise $2.8 million. And I'm like, what? What are you gonna do? Sell drugs?
That's what.
But yeah, so the hedge fund owner was like, all right, we're good. He's like, let's do this deal. And the guy who was mentoring me, he said, mind you, I have known him for 4 months, but this is the first time we actually talked about real estate.
Mhm.
So he said, the only way that I'm doing this deal is if he's the property manager and we throw in this equity for him.
Oh.
So the hedge fund guy was like, well, we already have someone in place.
Mm-hmm.
The guy I was with, he was like, are you sure? He was like, yeah, we already have someone in place. The guy I was with gets up and walks away from the table, gets in his car and leaves. Leaves me with the hedge fund owner. And he's like, well, Stoney, I guess we're doing business.
Hmm.
So they put my equity, a big chunk of equity, into this deal. They all did, the hedge fund and my buddy. And I managed the property for them. So I take a big chunk of that. So kind of double dipping. And he said, if you get your real estate license, we'll do it even further. So I went and got my license, I think the next month. And then they signed the exclusive right to list. So when we sell those, I'm the only one that can list them.
Hmm.
So he just
Hmm.
basically threw 100 grand
Yeah,
in
it's
my
a lot.
pocket
Yeah,
off of rip.
for sure.
Um, and since that was kind of my first thing, just understanding, it was new to me, but I had been a renter my
Mhm.
whole life.
Mm.
So I kind of understood the customer service part of it. I
Mhm.
understood the maintenance,
Yeah.
I understood being late on rent, but also being firm, fair, and consistent. At the same time, I wanted to teach the tenants
Mm-hmm.
how about generational wealth.
Yeah.
So that was a program that I did with them, is teach them about credit and generational wealth all in the same.
I feel like a
Stay
lot
busy.
of opportunities that have come your way are from just you opening yourself up
I
to
agree.
people and like
Socially.
networking with people,
Experiences.
social. You're like, I know this person, I know that person, and that
See
just
what they
Yeah.
opens
got.
the
Yeah.
doors. And I think that's a good kind of tool that people should
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
take it.
a lot of people won't speak. And if you don't speak, no one knows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was I was always open about speaking to people and not being shy because I grew up the way I grew up. My personality was, hey man, what can you do? Can you help me? I was always asking for help.
Always shaking
So
hands with people.
yeah, always shaking.
Yeah.
I'm big on, as you guys are, on relationship building and
Yeah.
know the importance of that. I got a college degree. It didn't really do much for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I literally went to college and did great in school only because of sports.
Yeah.
I knew that if I didn't do good in
The
college,
discipline.
couldn't play.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it didn't teach me anything, but it was more of it taught me like scheduling. But as far as using my degree, I've never used my degree.
I think it's a lot of who you know per se, but you're also
Yeah.
putting yourself in that position. It's not like it was
Yeah.
just handed to you. You're
Right.
like, no, I'm going out there and I'm
Just
gonna like
finding it.
meet people.
Yeah. And in America, we're taught, even our parents go down this road of teaching us this way because they were also programmed, but it's go to high school, finish high school, go to college, finish college.
Mhm.
While you're in college, you make sure you figure out what your dream is and you go do that dream for somebody else's company.
For the rest of your life.
Yes.
Be done.
You take the salary.
Take the salary,
Uh-huh.
the benefits.
Don't fight about it. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was at Huntington, I worked in incident management, and that's over the IT department. And I seen how much money I was saving the company just by taking incident calls.
Mm.
And one of the calls was $1.3 million, and it was a 6-minute call. I'm like, hold on, I'm getting $100,000, and I just made the company 1.2. And that was my eye opener to be like,
Yeah. What am
could
I
I
doing?
could take this whole department and go start it in my basement. Like,
Yeah.
and living overseas, you kind of see everyone's an entrepreneur.
Mm.
You don't have the prerequisites to go to college to be a lawyer. You didn't have prerequisites. Either you get in the program,
Mhm.
you either survive or you don't.
Right.
But there was no 8 years of prerequisites.
Yeah.
So just having that entrepreneur mentality it's not something that we learn here. You learn later.
Yeah.
That
was me later.
I think COVID saved a lot of people and taught people they could be entrepreneurs.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, because you have that, people were getting a check every week that protected them from going off on their own and starting a business and having to worry about making that income.
There was a saying though for a minute which kind of cracked me up. They called it the gig economy. You didn't hear that?
I never heard that.
Oh, I was on one of the women entrepreneur groups, and they called it the gig economy because so many people were just kind of doing side
A little
gigs.
gig. Their hustle.
Their little-
Their
it's
little
the
hobbies.
gig economy.
Hobbies were turning into
Hobbies are
careers.
turning into careers, so they call
Yeah.
it the gig economy. And I was
I
like,
guess
oh,
that's
that's
not
kinda
that
fun.
term, but I've heard that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool that happened.
Yeah.
A lot of hobbies became
Yeah.
their lifestyle. I love that.
Mhm.
Well, if someone wants to expand their network, and is there a way they can like reach out to you, or what's a good way to connect?
I can just call you.
You
Hey,
can.
you gotta learn how to-
I need a manager.
That's
No,
a great answer.
easy way. Email that will never change is stonyburks.com. Just kidding.
Oh. I was like, I don't know. Maybe
I
it
was like,
does.
I didn't know that
Okay,
one.
I have a question then, since that's not going to go anywhere.
Okay.
You may not like this one either, but if someone feels like they're kind of at their bottom, they're low, do you have any advice? I know we've kind of said a lot of things, but what is like your one piece of advice you'd give them to get their start working their way back up?
Sure. My one piece of advice is to understand that whatever is going on is not your fault. You have to really accept things for what they are in your current situation in order to move past it. But once you accept that, you can move past it. So for me, an exercise that I would do is I would write the current situation, what I did to get in that current situation, what it's going to take to get out of the current situation, and what it looks like when it's done. So from that, I work backwards.
Okay.
So if you want to make $1 million, if you act like you already have the million, everything else is downhill.
Yeah.
I think people spend so much time climbing up the hill instead of just putting a ladder on the hill and just working your way down. So
That's
just
interesting.
acceptance of the current situation. Really, you really have to say, this is what it is. I accept it. I don't want to be like this no more.
It's similar to what I'm doing an exercise with boundaries actually right now. It's very similar, kind of corresponds. I'm like, okay, this is the situation I am. What's the worst case scenario? Basically, if I say no to this, how are they going to react? And kind of like, okay, what's the best case? And seeing the other side of it, not getting stuck in your current situation.
Yeah.
Kind of similar.
Yeah, it's
You're
very similar.
basically saying no to your current whatever
Right.
and moving
You're
past
not
it.
going to sulk in it. You're
And
gonna
getting
move on.
and like, why am I resistant to saying no to it? Like, what's that underlying thing that I'm afraid of? And like moving past it.
Yeah, it's all about the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know the truth. That's just what it is. It's all history.
Right.
That means his story.
I like
Her
it.
story.
A horse. Yeah, his or hers.
Yeah.
Or them.
Don't do that.
Well, I don't know.
Don't do that.
I'm just trying to be, inclusive here. Well, I appreciate you coming on. That was really good. I got a lot out of that.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
Thanks, Stoney.
Appreciate you making me be vulnerable and talk about
Tell
things.
everything.
We
It always
appreciate it.
helps. We're always healing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
My word to everyone is don't be afraid to be honest.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because there's always somebody that has went through what you went through, and always share your story.
I feel like when you're
Love it.
vulnerable, that's when things shift.
Always.
For sure.
Mhm.
You have to be.
Thanks,
Thank
Stoney.
you.
Yeah.
Bye, beauties.
Bye, beauties.
Love it.
Boxland Media. Think big.